Welcome to today's podcast, The Future of Louisiana's Workforce. We have with us today an incredible panel of professionals who work every day to ensure that Louisiana's workforce and Louisiana is positioned to win. We have with us first the Secretary of the Louisiana Workforce Commission, Ms. Susanna Showen. We also have with us from the Louisiana Economic Development, Ms. Susan Bourgeois, Secretary. We also have Secretary of the Department of Revenue, Mr. Richard Nelson. You know, Louisiana's community and technical colleges celebrated their 25th anniversary this past year. And with that, today, 12 colleges graduating over 35,000 students. But the question becomes, to what end? And so today, I'd like to begin with a question for Secretary Bourgeois. And that is, can you talk a bit about the work of the 35,000 graduates every year, the impact in the market? You particularly are having discussions with business partners on a daily basis. Very interested to hear, what is the impact?
Well, thank you, Monty. I think primarily, first and foremost, the impact is that the LCTCS system, those colleges are on the forefront, right? The front lines of interacting between our industry, our businesses, the workers themselves, and they're the training connectors, right? So that frontline role is critical, first of all, to make sure that Louisiana is positioned to win. You'll probably hear me say that a lot in our time together today. The second piece that we see and that we experience, and I've seen this all over the state, is that the ability of those colleges to be nimble and flexible and react, pivot, and develop either curriculums or specific training or specific initiatives based around what the industry needs are. So just that nimble nature is really critical to the success of our work and of your work. The third piece of that, as I'd say, is the being able to react to industry specifically, right? Just sort of that direct line between industry, need, and creating the answer, creating the solution related to it. And then lastly, I think this is really important for the workers themselves, the folks who are getting trained, our citizens who are getting upskilled. Most of the time, it's quicker, it's less expensive, and it's a speed to market for them as an employee. That is so valuable for them.
Yes, so well said. Speed to market, the proximity to the market of these programs is so critically important. Thank you for a great answer. Secretary Showen, from a workforce development standpoint, what are some of the most in-demand skills and growing industries that community and technical colleges are focusing on to meet the needs?
That's a wonderful question, and one that I have actually spent quite a long time talking about, even just earlier today. It's critically important for our people here in Louisiana to understand where opportunities really are. And if you look at by far the largest number of unfilled job openings in this state right now, you're going to see things like the skilled trades. Yes. The skilled trades are incredibly important to economic growth. The new projects that Susan and her team have been so very effective at bringing into our state require enormous numbers of construction workers to build them, but then they're needed after that to maintain the facilities, and they're needed to work and operate in the facilities themselves. And I really think that that's kind of an unappreciated opportunity in terms of our young people, particularly graduating from high school and not knowing, to Susan's point, that these are quick programs, they are inexpensive programs, and they can be out there making extraordinarily good money, a true middle-class lifestyle with very little upfront investment.
The great comment. And one of the things that I think is important about Louisiana and about our policy environment is that we don't simply stop at jobs. We don't simply stop at alignment to the market, nor with education. It actually goes a step further. And I think what's important is that we recognize that those jobs, those great opportunities you just described, result in an income and taxes for the state of Louisiana that allow us to be able to do more for our people. So transitioning, Richard, to your department, plays a critical role in managing state revenue and ensuring economic stability. I think that word stability is really important for our people. How do you see community and technical colleges contributing to the state, particularly in terms of workforce, readiness, economic growth, and tax policy?
Absolutely. So, I'm the tax department, so we're always looking for more taxpayers, right? Sure. And so the more money they make, it's it translates not just to more income taxes, which obviously we took a big reduction in income taxes, but they generate more sales taxes, they generate more property tax when they go buy a house. The businesses that they are generate taxes as well, and so at the end of the day, those are the things that pay for the roads, pay for the police, pay for the schools, and it's a virtuous cycle. That the more economic activity you have going on, that's the rising tide that raises all ships, right? You get better economic outcomes, better educational outcomes, better lower crime, and so I think from a revenue department, that's what we've tried to do, is try to make the most competitive environment, at least from a tax policy perspective, so that all these other things can succeed. And I think, just in the last year or so, all of us working together, we've really achieved some pretty significant goals. We've made generational reform in the tax area that I think we've gotten recognition around the country for that. We've been able to land these big projects, I think directly a result of some of those changes. And I think we're going to see in the future the demand is just going to get better. Louisiana's been holding itself back. We've been shooting ourselves in the foot with bad policy for a long time, and we've got a lot of that out of the way. And so now what you're going to see is you're going to have this huge demand for workers to stay here in Louisiana. We made it more competitive for people to stay here, and I think the community technical college system is the most responsive organization to fulfilling those needs. And I think going forward, as the tax collector, I'm excited about it. There's going to be a lot more economic activity. I think a lot more taxes to fix all these problems.
Yes. Well, we spend a good bit of time in the Capitol talking about generating taxpayers. So good to hear you're on the same
I'm a believer.
Sheet music with us. So next, let's shift our thoughts to industry partnerships. And strong industry partnerships are key to any workforce relationship, and certainly in economic development and a number of others. And frankly, even in the Department of Revenue, you have relationships with what we know are employers and businesses in Louisiana, people trying to succeed and invest in Louisiana. So I think one of the areas that we have done, I think, a really nice job in is in the healthcare space. And Susie, you've been involved in much of the healthcare work that we've done with groups like Ochsner and others. Can you talk about some other examples where you've seen partnerships within industry with community and technical colleges that you think is one that we should lift up and show as an example for people across the state?
Glad to. I think the example that I'd like to highlight is Louisiana Delta Community College in Northeast Louisiana, which really leapt on the opportunity offered by the broadband expansion projects. So Northeast Louisiana really struggles and has struggled economically as a result of poor infrastructure, including poor digital infrastructure. So there was an opportunity to address that and open up economic development opportunities up there. And Louisiana Delta saw that and decided to just take the lead, take the bull by the horns. And they partnered with a company called Etheridge Pipe and Conduit, I think is their full name, so EPC. Those two brothers that run that company, the Etheridges, they taught that first program. So it was such a highly engaged relationship. They came in and shared their time and expertise with the instructors. They did a train-the-trainer model, and they left with the confidence that those young people in those programs were going to be ready to go because they're the ones that built the curriculum in partnership and by training the instructors. It was an amazing program and helped to, prepare the soil for further growth.
I'm so glad that you brought up that example, because here's a Louisiana company, a couple of guys that are right here from Louisiana that said, we can make a living in the pipeline industry. When the pipeline industry changed, they pivoted and they began to think differently. And where did they go? They went to their community and technical college. Those partnerships, I think, are so critically important. So that's not only is that an excellent example, but I think it also leads us right into the next question. Do institutions face, what challenges do institutions face when developing these partnerships, and how can they be overcome? Particularly, Secretary Bourgeois, from your perspective, as you work with these businesses, what do you hear?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're hearing a lot, we just went through a strategic plan, is a critical component that we have to continue to do a better job at in Louisiana is an ease of use, right? An ease of doing business. And so, because oftentimes the first question is who's driving the bus? And this is a great example, right? And one of the things that I think is very effective in the community and technical college system is that it's easy to identify who's driving the bus simply based on the project, right? In some cases, it's going to be a particular industry or an industry leader. In some cases, it's going to be the college itself, right? In some cases, it can be a third partner who works with those two. And so identifying who's driving the bus first is critical. And I think that's something we're working on developing statewide, certainly. But within the system, that is an easy identifier. But then if you really look at also sort of the expansion of industry interacting and overcoming some of those challenges, I think at the end of the day, we can't wait to start talking to people when they're out of high school. Apprenticeships and opportunities for people over 18 are important. They will be, and we need to expand them. But truth be told, with kids' access to information, right? It's a different world that we live in, and their access to information, if we're not getting that kinds of information about the opportunity and the specifics, and even the sort of the preemptive training much earlier, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, then we're missing the mark in many respects. And so shifting some of those apprenticeship plans and behaviors, if you will, younger, I think is a challenge we need to work to overcome, expanding those opportunities for all ages. And really the overarching piece, and Susie, you've already said opportunity. It is the drum we are beating so loudly inside of our organization, because telling the story of the Louisiana opportunity has been a missed opportunity, no pun intended, for a very long time. And that story is not just one we at LED need to sell to businesses and industry interested in coming here. It's just as important that all of us as partners tell that story to the 8th grader, to the 9th grader, to the 10th grader, to say you do have the opportunity here. You have an opportunity to get trained quickly, go to work, make a good living for yourself, ultimately your family, and stay here. That story of opportunity is a challenge that I think we all together are working to overcome, but there's some aggressive nature we need to put behind that.
Yes, without a doubt. Very well said. When you think about the technology changes that have occurred just at a very base level in the last 15 to 20 years, the opportunity for Louisiana looks different today than it did in prior generations. I think that's the interesting part. Richard, you've seen incredible changes in the revenue department from the tax collections perspective, particularly the shift to online sales or online buying has been a huge part of the technology change. As you look across job markets, as you look across the future of the state of Louisiana, and you think about automation, AI, all of the different factors that will come into play from a jobs perspective, what do you see on the horizon? How do you see automation changing?
Yeah, so I'm maybe a little bit younger from most revenue secretaries, legislators, and stuff like that, so I have a little bit different perspective. I told my folks we need to get rid of everything where you had to fax, use a fax machine.
Did we.
That's not how we want to do business anymore. And I think that's kind of a modernization, I think maybe across the state government, that we're trying to make things easier, more user-friendly. But I think AI, honestly, I follow that a lot, and I look and, followed it some. And, really that's going to be probably up there with, discovery of fire and electricity as far as how it's going to change things. And honestly, my view would be that would make the community technical college system even more important, because you're going to end up automating a lot of these things that you're going to see, I think, a greater fall in those white collar jobs, engineers and architects, attorneys. A lot of that stuff can be automated. It's going to end up being that way, but it's very difficult to automate a plumber. There's no way that the code is going to come out and fix the plumbing in your house, or be an electrician and install wires throughout the facility or something like that. Those are things that are hard skills that will always be around. So if I'm talking to my kids, and at the end of the day, it's like, yes, go to college, go do whatever, but at the end of the day, those jobs are going to look completely different. 10 years or 20 years from now. Honestly, even 2 years from now. Right. But things like plumbers and bricklayer, these actually skilled trades that I know are a deficit anyway, that's going to become even more critical. And I think you can look at that data center, the metadata center up in Richland Parish. Right. They're spending $10 billion. I think it's going to take 10,000 electricians or something to put that in. Yeah. So I think in the future, that's going to make the community technical college system even more critical in supplying that skilled labor that I don't know is ever going to be automated by a robot. It's sort of that piece is way far down the road, as opposed to having it spit out your master's thesis. And you can see that just in I think in the 4 years of universities, they have AI that now does all their work, right? So, I mean, if your university degree can be done by AI, the job that you're using that university degree for can also probably be automated. And that's the practical reality, right?
Yes.
That's a lot harder for some of those other things.
Well, very, very well stated. I got to tell you, the future of AI, from my perspective, means that more people will need the two-year college. What has really happened in the last 40 years of post-secondary education, the one big change has been that students no longer attend in the traditional mindset of semester, 12 semesters, whatever the number is, and you're done, right? 12 on average. Most of the students today are attending in a shorter period of time and then going to work. And so it is a much more iterative approach. So it speaks to what you're describing. What I anticipate are more people with baccalaureate degrees coming back to our two-year colleges to learn the skills that will help them stay in the economy. That is a big part of the role of the future. So our community and technical colleges are focused on those partnerships, as we've all talked about. They're rethinking education to ensure that students have the skills and credentials to succeed in these high-demand fields. Looking ahead, workforce needs are changing by the day. Susie, what trends do you see shaping the future of community and technical college training programs?
Well, I think I'm going to echo exactly what Richard was just saying, that the jobs that can be done by a person are in many ways physical and hands-on types of roles. So many jobs are being automated by AI, but they open up other opportunities as well, and not just in the skilled trades, right? There are a lot of technology opportunities and so on that we haven't really talked about that really do provide good pathways for people. But I think generally speaking, the workforce landscape of the future is as far away as possible from our old tradition of somebody decides at the end of high school, I'm going to go to college, and they explore and find themselves and then graduate in something and they get a great job because they have a college degree and that's the job they're in for the rest of their lives. The community colleges speak to the opposite of that. They speak to people not taking 4 years in a row outside of their lives. They speak to not coming out of high school and having to wait before you get into the workforce. So I think the types of programs that allow people to be in the workforce at the same time that they're improving their skills, maybe shifting and moving, it's not like one step, one step, one step. It's all one movement. You're doing it all at the same time. Yes. I think online learning is an important part of that. But again, it really is the physical, hands-on skill building that people need that community colleges offer that really nobody else does.
One of the things that we're hopeful to be able to do is to bring together the services, because really what we're talking about is you're going from a 4 or 5 year period of education to a much shorter time frame. So the question becomes, how do you then build in the benefits in a much more concerted effort at a similar point in time in life so that you advance that period of training and make it more possible? We talked about the benefits cliff among this entire group a number of times. We know that's a challenge. Richard, in your world, what proposals would you have for funding opportunities for institutions to ensure that we're producing that tax base?
I think, I like to look at the return on investment analysis and say, what do you get, what dollar do you get? The state spends a whole lot of money. I mean, I think obviously the federal government spends even more. But, I try to say, well, what are we looking at? Are we getting the best bang for our buck? And I think the community technical college system is one of the things that is generally underfunded. I mean, like we talked about, providing free childcare for folks attending. I mean, I know that's a big barrier. I think there's probably not a bigger bang for your buck than providing free childcare when you had somebody going to get some new training so that they come out and they can be, a taxpayer who's really generating a lot more for the state and a lot more economic activity. Yes. I think lowering the tuition rate. I know even the tuition, it might not be a lot compared to a 4-year school, but I think giving that additional state support and putting those resources behind that so that really tuition should never be a barrier to somebody going to get a 2-year or even lower, professional certification or something. Like it should never be a barrier, because the bang for your buck from the state perspective, you're going to get so much more revenue out of a person when they go from making, $15 an hour to $30 an hour. You're going to get such a big bang for your buck over their entire lifetime, right? These are like, 20-year-olds and 18-year-olds or wherever they are, you're going to get so much more, such a greater return from investing in that. From my perspective, that would be a huge focus of where the state should lean toward as far as getting that, the best bang for our buck.
Yes, and we know that most of these students stay in state as well,
Yes.
which is another big part of that discussion. Secretary Bourgeois, we've had some huge wins of late, and I know I've heard you speak so eloquently about them and so much excitement. Can you speak a bit about the importance of Meta in particular in Northeast Louisiana, and then a bit of discussion about the Hyundai project, Hyundai Steel project, and how those two are similar and how they're different?
Yeah, I could talk about this a lot, so you'll probably have to cut me off on this one. So we'll start with Meta. It came first. A number of things, not the least of which is from day one on both of those projects, we've used what we keep calling a whole of government approach, right? That this was not just Louisiana economic development in a silo working with the companies. This has really been a team approach to all of this, and the community and technical college system, you personally, Monty, but your system being at the very beginning of those discussions were a critical component, as was revenue, as was Susie. I mean, really, we have immense pride in the fact that we were able to do it that way. So the partnership, first of all. But if you look at Meta and the investment, so $10 billion is the public number, and I believe it will cost more than that just because everything costs more than that these days, right? But $10 billion is the one that's on paper.
They're also building the 3 power plants, right?
Right,
To
and that
power,
doesn't
so,
even include the 3 power plants that are being built to be able to power this. And all the ancillary community benefit, the housing that's going to be needed for these folks, right? The restaurants, all those pieces aren't in that number at all. But there are 3 critical components to it. Number one is, and I think Richard mentioned it, is the construction jobs. Yeah. That one project is going to take somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 construction workers for 3 to 5 years, yes. Right? In a parish that is historically agricultural, a extremely high number of people in that parish compared to other parishes live below the poverty rate, right? So it's not only is it transformational for the parish, it's transformational for the region, and I believe ultimately for the state. But so just the construction jobs to begin with. And what we have to be very careful of and very cognizant of is, while we're really grateful for Meta and we consider Meta a great win, we can't make this a zero-sum game where every electrician in Louisiana, right, now leaves their current employer to go to Richland Parish, right, to work on the new shiny thing that's really important, right? That's not success for any of us in the long run, right? And so creating more of those people is more important than ever. Then the second piece is the permanent jobs, right? So now we're talking about 6,000 construction jobs, 500 permanent jobs, but those 500 permanent jobs are $95,000 and $96,000 a year jobs. You know, these are not low-wage jobs. These are dramatically higher than the parish wage average right now. Transformational jobs for people, for lives, for families, for communities. And so that one project is doing that, right? And you know, we knew the importance of it, you knew the importance of it, the fact that your system was well ahead of trying to develop a curriculum. The minute you heard this was even on the table, you mentioned Delta, right? It was DRCC that stepped in with Monty's leadership and said, okay, now we have to be in the business of making sure we have a curriculum not just for the tradespeople, but for the people who are actually going to work there. So just being ahead of it, and just what that means for the state. And I love that it's North Louisiana, and I love that it's a parish that has seen, right, population loss, disinvestment, et cetera. I love that our first big win was there. Now, sort of same side or different side of the same coin, if you look at the announcement just last week about Hyundai, and if I could have scripted it this way, I would have, but I didn't script it, right? So now we're South Louisiana. So we've gone from North Louisiana to South Louisiana. We've gone from technology and new industry, right, to manufacturing, right? One of Louisiana's sweet spots, something that we've been good at for a long time, but it's clean manufacturing, it's advanced manufacturing. It's the way they do this at Hyundai is really remarkable for the kind of facility they're going to build. So now we're in South Louisiana, a completely different sector. Again, a 4 to 5 year construction build with 5,000 construction jobs. Now, about 300 miles away from the Meta spot, right? Another 5,000 construction jobs. But this one is fundamentally different in that the permanent jobs, 1,500 permanent jobs, $100,000 a year average salary. That's a lot of people you guys have to train.
Yes.
And that's great, because that is the pipeline for these jobs. And I think not only is the system well positioned to do it, the communities are well positioned to do it, but when we're negotiating with Hyundai, we know we have to build in a training center, right? That you got a training center under the LCTCS system right there with them. And so again, it just goes back to this whole of government approach, but all of those things have to be in place to make either of those two projects successful. And you know, I love telling the story, but I will tell you, we're not done. You know, even if we were 2 and done, it would be a heavy lift from the workforce commissions.
Absolutely.
Right, Richard's going to have so much money to count, he's not going to know what to do with it. You've got a lot of people to train, but we're not 2 and done. The culture in Louisiana is changing, the opportunity is changing. There will be many more of those, and that just ups the bar for all of us to deliver.
Yes. I love the excitement in your voice when you talk about these projects. There's one element I want to mention. Yes, Northeast Louisiana is certainly a place. I hail from there, and as you know, it is very important to me. But the west side of the river in Ascension Parish represents a bit of a similar kind of dynamic in terms of just the community, the resources that are available. So it's exciting to see people with opportunity now that maybe didn't have it before. There's a renewed sense of excitement.
Yeah, let me say, and I'm probably not going to get the exact statistic right, but it's close. Someone can fact check me. I just learned this. When you talk about average wage in a parish, right? In Ascension Parish, the average wage is actually pretty high, around $90,000. So even this is even higher than that. But when you just look at the West Bank of Ascension Parish, and you look at Donaldsonville specific, where this facility is going to be, the average wage is $26,000. You want to talk about transformative?
That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Well, this has been incredible, and I thank you. This last round, I'd like to give you an opportunity just wide open. Anything that you would like to add to the discussion? And Richard, we'll start with you.
Oh, you know, I guess I'm not that old, but I've been in politics for a little while, and I mean, I've always somewhat had, I would say, a foolish optimism about Louisiana. Of I believe it can do better. You know, I think I could read. Just the resources that we have, the capability, the potential that the state has. And I am, now I would say confidently optimistic that the future of Louisiana is going to be so much brighter. I think we've made significant changes that have really, I think, seized the opportunity in just the last year. And I think the educational statistics that we I worked on that in the legislature. 4th grade literacy, we're 16th in the country now. I mean, from a state like Louisiana to go from bottom, what are we, 49th or something a few years ago. Now we're 16th. I think the tax business climate rankings, we're moving that same direction. I really think the next 5 years in the state will be nothing like the last 50 years. And I mean, now we're going to be able to walk into the airport lounges and around the country and say, yeah, I'm from Louisiana. The ones that, maybe we kick your butt in football, but we're kicking your butt in everything else too. And I think that's just just a different feeling, I think, for the state. And I think, kind of to Susan's point, is that we need to be more infectious with that optimism and not say, hey, yeah, we moved to Texas. I think what we're going to see is those kids from Texas having to move here. And that's what I think, all aspire to. And I think we're going to see that more and more coming in the next couple of years.
They need a bit of culture over there. They will love.
They need better food. We got better
so much better when they come to Louisiana, right?
More fun.
That's right. That's it. So, Secretary Bourgeois?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Richard said. I think that optimism piece is not only, it's real, it's not just messaging, right? We're not just telling a story, that's real. And this would be a harder story to tell without the Metas and the Hyundais, but it's here and it's real. And it is infectious, and I will say it's even, the country and the world are paying attention. We are getting phone calls from people who do this for a living, site selectors, or just people who work in this space, asking what in the world's going on in Louisiana. And so people are taking notice, and what I have sensed and I have seen just in the brief 14 months or so that I've been doing this, our people have they've been ready to be hopeful. They've been ready to be optimistic, and they've been ready to be excited. And I think all the things that we're talking about, everything Richard said, he's exactly right. Education reform, tax reform, business climate reform. Then we get the wins. Then we get Susie's shop doing meaningful change for people to upskill them and reskill them and get them. And I mean, those things are very real, and people want to be part of success, and they're feeling that.
That's it. Ready to get to work.
Yes.
Right? Ready to get to work. Secretary Shaw, I'll give you the final word.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to build off the sense of positivity, but also we have been talking about low wages in impoverished parts of our community. We have an opportunity right now to tackle generational poverty in Louisiana head on. And we do that through economic growth that drives opportunity, that allows our people to achieve the dignity of self-sufficiency, to achieve that American dream. We are in a moment in time where we can change Louisiana. When we do that, when we put these people in these jobs, we lower crime rates. We improve educational outcomes. We improve health outcomes. All those places where we are disappointed by Louisiana's ranking, we make all of those things better by this kind of work, and LCTCS is right at the core of it.
Well, thanks to each one of you for the panel today. Thank you for your comments. Louisiana's community and technical colleges are benefit daily from the great work that each one of you do, the leadership that you drive, the sense of hope and opportunity. It's infected our organization just as it has yours, and we're as excited as anyone out there. We are ready to get started, to go to work. Folks, the community and technical colleges in the state of Louisiana benefit daily from these professionals and the great work that they do. As we look forward to the years ahead, as we look forward to this upcoming session, encourage each one of you to think about the role that the community and technical college has played in your community and in your own lives, perhaps even in your family's lives. So I urge you to seek out your community and technical college, but I also urge you to be bitten by the bug. More people educated and skilled, more people working in Louisiana, more people paying taxes is important, makes for a better Louisiana. And that's what we're all about. Thank you for joining us for today's webcast.